Hi, everyone. My name is Ken Maxey. I have the pleasure today to moderate a panel which I believe that you'll enjoy. The three panelists are, in their own respect and in their own field, experts in regards to what they do around nonprofits. And so I hope that you'll learn a little bit about what they do and hopefully take this back to your respective communities as examples of what you can do as far as partnerships in the public-private space. So what do I do? I'm Ken Maxey. I'm the Director of External Affairs with Comcast NBC Universal. Here in the Bay Area, I'm across the bridge for the last 8 years as a director. And so in my role, I do a lot of supporting nonprofit organizations like these three to ensure that our community has a field of the next generation that can actually hopefully get the jobs of the future. And so today, without further ado, let me, pass the mic over to this young lady, Alicia Contreras, who's with the Spanish-Speaking Citizens Foundation. She's the executive director. And Alicia, why don't you give them your title, your name, your favorite app, and let's see.
Start with three if we can.
Okay, we'll start with three. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alicia Contreras. I'm the director of the Spanish-Speaking Citizens Foundation. We're located in Oakland, California, near the Fruitvale area. We work with youth, and my favorite app is becoming Snapchat, believe it or not, because that's the way I found to really connect with the kids. They don't answer phones, they don't send text messages, they don't send emails. I gave up. Snapchat, life-saving. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Paul Williams. I'm the director of the David E. Glover Education and Technology Center in East Oakland. My favorite app? Probably Angry Birds right now. It's a good stress reliever right now. Google Calendar, managing my tasks, stuff like that.
My name is Kalimah Priforce, and I am the headmaster CEO of Kino. Kino is an urban think tank, the first of its kind, focused on inclusive innovation, representing over 300 organizations who are part of this grassroots movement around the country and soon globally, who are focused on building a STEAM pipeline. My favorite app used to be Bumble. Well, that's a whole nother story. But right now it's Slack. Like right now, the best way, because I haven't had business cards since the 90s, and so the best way to contact me is through our company Slack.
So let's get into this. You all represent some of the oldest organizations actually in Oakland, as well as some of the newest as far as nonprofit organizations. Oakland is a city of approximately almost 500,000 people. It's changing. The population's changing. How are you fulfilling the needs of the populations that are still feeling kind of locked out and how are you doing that through technology, and how do you feel that there needs to be more of that?
So at the David E. Glover Education and Technology Center, we have a youth program called Tech U Coding. Tech U Coding is a program for middle school and high school students where they can explore using cutting edge technology. So right now they're using virtual reality, augmented reality, learning about machine learning, artificial intelligence, and they're just being a part of the conversation. They love tinkering with their hands, so building robots, it's stuff like that. We provide that space for them. So why cutting edge technology is so that we are preparing our kids, middle school and high school kids, for the future to be competitive, understand what it takes to really succeed in this emerging or this evolving tech ecosystem right now. So we've been doing it for the last 2 years now. We renovated our space, redesigned the whole infrastructure just to provide that sense of pride within the community as well. So we don't work with just the youth. We bring in the families as well that be a part of the conversation. The family's going to play a bigger role in how the youth are, taking on certain roles within the tech ecosystem. So we want to include the families and just really bring the community at large to learn these skills so they can provide a sense of wealth for themselves. Wealth financially, wealth through health, minds, body, and spirit.
Our organization is 52 years old, and we're very well known. We have like youth coming who are the grandchildren of the grandfather who came first for our immigration services and became a citizen, and the whole family has gone through different stages. And the population is changing. The population, while we have adults that need to fill in forms, and unfortunately or fortunately, everything is easier but more difficult, because while we can find everything on the internet to apply for yada yada, our population doesn't even understand the language and doesn't understand, how to use a computer and how to fill in those things. So it's challenging because many of us take for granted to just grab your computer, use your computer, and we forget that so many people don't have access to computers. I mean, that's one of the reasons why actually I connected so great with Ken, because Ken is doing a great job with Internet Essentials, and it's really helping families to be able to access internet in their homes. Like, one of the things that happens is that they don't even have access to a computer. So they don't have access to learn how to use it. They don't have access to those forms. They don't have a printer to print the form. And just a couple of weeks, I love to see the face of the mom that finally finds a way to provide that internet access to her kid in her home, paying like $10 a month, which was something that she never heard of. And that makes a big difference in many, many different levels. It increased safety for the child because she doesn't have to be at 8 p.m. at our center doing her homework. Instead, she can do her homework at home. And also, it opens up a new level of access. And of course, there's always the good things and the bad things, right? Because the other thing also that we are trying to figure out is how do we provide that access to the internet to this young population, and at the same time help them prevent becoming addicts of the internet, where I see also families that are really struggling to keep their kids out of the computer. It's like they're becoming addicts. So there is this good and bad news all the time, where we have the good news is, yes, there is more access. The bad news is now we have a new health problem. But it's definitely helping a lot our families to do homework, to learn language more easily. I love also our kids now are playing the Duolingo thing also and learning English faster than they were learning before.
So Kino's greatest hits, we have, on top of developing our research and advocacy side, we have our enterprises portfolio, and our greatest hit is our Hackathon Academy. And when we launched Hackathon Academy several years ago, it was the first in collaboration with Startup Weekend, the first Startup Weekend in Oakland. So prior to all the Startup Weekends, the hundreds that were happening around the world, no one had decided to create a Startup Weekend in Oakland, right in our backyard of Silicon Valley. And we decided to not only create this sort of a hackathon experience that would tackle the question, could an app have saved Trayvon Martin? But it was also a different way of working, that we decided that it wouldn't just be a sort of singular, monolithic black experience, that it would be a black and brown experience, that it would include as many girls as boys, that it would be public and private partnerships. And that's one of the reasons why our relationship with not just the corporate sector, but the foundation sector, and getting people into a room to start talking about how do we start creating a future, and how do we not get sort of caught up in some of the nonprofit industrial complex where we're competing for funds, and we want to be the darling of different tech companies, but we're not actually working together to create a web that can actually transform children's lives and their families.
So the Peer Institute at Harvard, the Peer Institute Partnerships in Education and Resilience at Harvard and the McLean Hospital did a study about after-school programs and technology. And I just want you to listen to this. They said the study found that after-school programs are so important that the way that the majority of students actually learn STEM 80% said that STEM career knowledge is increased by after-school programs like your programs. 78% reported a more positive attitude about STEM. 72% said that their perseverance and critical thinking skills increased. And across the 11 states in which they did this study, 70% of the students reported positive gains in those areas of STEM. What are the trends that you're seeing with our young people? And with so much going on in the world, particularly in today's times, how are we wrapping ourselves around them, but not just saying, hey, this is a safe place to be after school, but that it's a place that we're going to ensure that they have the skills for tomorrow?
Oh wow, some of the trends that we see. I mean, we have an after-school program every day. You know, we try to address that problem, trying to get kids into the door. But getting the kids into the door, they're really thirsty for learning, and this is where the type of trends that I see, that if we can create a personalized learning environment for them, you know, that they will succeed. You know, they want to succeed. If we allow them to learn by using their hands, you know, they show those passions and desires to succeed. And they just want to understand the whole ecosystem of what technology is in general. You know, so although we focus in on coding, they are really excited about the different roles that are connected to coding, like animation, content writing, modeling, storytelling, you know what I mean? So all these things that are connected to tech, we're able to see that kids, once we demystify what STEM careers are, that they're really excited about tech. They're really excited about these type of careers and opportunities. So we just try to create that space. You know, we're best known for our after-school program, but we also do hackathons. You know, we also have spring break and summer immersion camps to really engage with as many of the students as possible. So they're thirsty for the knowledge. They can compete with current professionals in this industry. Our kids are learning Unity 3D and programming in C# and Python, and they're creating chatterbots. And these are middle school and high school kids. They're learning how to compete at these hackathons by understanding that they can win prizes, whatever those prizes are. So they're being very selective and strategic about how they navigate the tech ecosystem. So it's very exciting just to see them just explore and still be youthful. I mean, at the end of the day, these are kids. They're 12-year-olds to 17-year-olds. We all can relate to what that was like, you know, so just being personable, being a role model for them does go a long way. But as far as the learning that's taking place, I mean, we see lots of trends, you know, creating them some learnings or personalized learning experiences and seeing them succeed and exploring their own, just basically having a sense of agency about their own careers and lives.
The kids we're working with are at the lower level in the process. One of the things that we had a program, for example, to help kids to go to college. And in the Latino population that we serve, the majority of the youth actually are newcomers. And they're coming from mountains in Guatemala, where they have never touched a computer. So what we're experiencing is like we're the first giving the opportunity to be in front of a computer and touch it. I understand that actually, you know, this is how you type, and it's sad in a way because you realize that there is a huge gap around the world where while we are coding here, there are kids around the world where they have never touched a computer. They have seen them on a TV probably, but not touched them. And you know, so it's sad in a way, but also it's so empowering when you see these kids just sucking information and suddenly feeling more comfortable. So I think that the phones are really helping in making the gap smaller because they are the whole time they are learning everything in the phone. They're doing their homework in the phone. They're doing so much things on the phone that the phones were not designed for, but they're using them for them. And this is something that is actually interesting because in a way they are learning faster, but also in this generation I see that many kids say, yes, I know how to do that, and they don't really know how to do that. one of the things that we're working on is being sure that they learn how to use Excel, how to use PowerPoint, how to use Word, which are basic for the high school. And where they arrive, they don't think about these kids. They think about the kids who were here in elementary school, middle school, high school, who learn already how to use those things, and our kids don't know how to use those things. So we are at a different level with our kids, but by hanging out with people who are professionals in the STEM areas is how they are suddenly starting to dream that someday they will get there. And they're super smart. I mean, it's amazing how they are picking up English and how they are picking up everything so fast. So the kids we're working with are not at the point where they are coding, but I can see that very soon they will be, and we're doing the best we can to help them get faster there.
So, and Ken and I have been, we're good friends, and Ken knows me enough to, you don't invite Kalimah Priforce on the panelists, you expect he's going to start something, right? So here it is, you have STEAM that's saying, hey, the STEAM research, the data says it's working. And then you have D&I that's saying it's not working. How is it that these two can exist in the same space? Well, it's one of the things that that this conversation around sexual harassment and the mistreatment of women and those who are female identified is so important is because it goes down to one of the biggest issues of sexism in Silicon Valley and beyond Silicon Valley, which is men don't listen. So if there are people who are on the ground doing transformative work, whether it's David E. Glover Center, whether it's Black Girls Code, whether it's Blue Lads in Chicago, whether it's Journey in Detroit, whether it's Code Crew in Memphis, Tennessee, Code Fever in Florida, and I can go on of all these people doing fantastic work, and it's working. Why is it that the tech companies aren't listening to us? Because if they did listen, they will see that the biggest trend in trying to create an ecosystem of mobility is trauma. And that if you don't calculate how trauma informs and creates barriers to that kind of mobility, then you're missing the mark, because all you can focus on is skills. And that's all they want. They want skills. And that's the conversation. And so one of the things that I'm concerned about is that as we are thinking about bringing more people in terms of diversity and inclusion into the tech space, is internalized racism. That you've got people who are happy to get a job, they're black and brown, great, they're a woman, great, they got a job, and they've boosted the numbers of that tech company by 8% or 0.5%. And then on their weekends, they're in Tahoe, or they're spending their time and their money somewhere else, and they forgot these young people. They forgot to build a bridge because they don't walk these streets. They don't go to these schools. Their level of empathy and connection to building a pipeline of mobility isn't there. And so we are doing what we're doing, and what we want to encourage tech companies to do is that if you're going to be hiring someone black, someone Latino, someone who is differently abled, then ask them if they love their community enough to be involved in their community, not just between the hours of 8 to 4.
Wow. Okay. Well, you started a little fire today. And I think I'm going to continue that conversation with the last question before we actually take some questions. What does a successful private corporation partnership look like for any of your organizations? And can you walk us through how that actually occurred? Because quite frankly, how does the private sector find you? How does a startup find you? How does a company that's been existing for many years not find you? What is the challenge today? because it seems to me that as we talk about skills that are needed in tech, that there's been organizations for years, NSBE is one of them, right, that have existed, and there's one for the Latino and for the Asian American community and for women. And so I just want to find out, and I want this audience to learn, what is missing, and it seems like Kalimah was starting to hit on this, but what is your experience of what's not working and how we can make it work?
Well, one of the things that I think is very challenging for nonprofits in the collaboration is that we're not equal partners. When we get grants, we are put sometimes in positions where we have to say, yes, I'm going to do this, even though you're seeing that this is what you really need to do. And you do that to survive. And I hear a yes here, so I guess we're not the only ones, right?
Amen.
And we're put in a position where also we don't have the flexibility that a company has. Like in a company like Google, for example, you might have your budget for PR and for this and for that. And nonprofits, we have how many hats? We have every single day. You have to be the human resources person and the administrator and the manager and when the grants are coming out, you have to deal with competition, with you can't see your friend as a partner anymore because you know that you are competing for the same pennies. And in those pennies, there isn't enough money to actually run the organization as we need it to be run because, like in our case, we have a building, and the building has ongoing expenses for the 365 days. We are there or we're not there, we still have to pay all the bills, all the staff, all the everything, just like everybody else. But to find those funds that pay for those expenses that are part of what you need in order to do the outreach, to be present and get the confidence from the community to know that you are there when they need you, it's very hard or it's very rare to find those funds. So because of that, because we have so many hats, so many times, I'm in a situation where there is like 3 great events where I should be because that might be the possibility for the organization to get some funds, but I have so many fires to extinguish that sometimes I'm stuck in that was an amazing opportunity, but I couldn't be there because I also have to be here and here and here. So the challenges that I can see in the partnership is first, we're not equal partners. And when we're not equal partners, we're not treated equally. The budget is always a challenge. And I think that an amazing partnership will become when corporations can be more involved in the community in a way that you don't come just for the picture, of the ribbon cutting for the computer lab, but you are there actually volunteering, teaching this kid and talking about your career. And in that connection is when you can really see what's going on inside of the organization and inside of the community. And I think that this is following what you just said, because I think that when you get out of this community, you stop understanding this community. And bringing more opportunities for nonprofits to get flexible funding that allow us and give us room to that growth, I think will give the opportunity to corporations to have much better partners. Because the better established, the strongest we are, the better partners will be.
So I read, I forget what statistic I was looking at, but in America, 60% of kids look up to, in America, kids look up to their parents for role models 60% of the time. That means about 40% of the time kids are getting their inspiration from others. So for me, that just shows that there's evidence that it does take a community and a village to work with these kids and to raise these kids. But like Alicia was saying, it is a lot of work, you know. I mean, so on the ground level, you know, like Brother Kalimah was saying, there is a lot of trauma. And when you're not dealing with that trauma, when you're not like helping facilitate, you know, people through their trauma so that they can be inclusive in this space, that is stressful. These are things that do not come on your, you know, with the assignment that you, with the job that you signed up for. These are things that you don't want to do. You want to be good at and focus on running a good program, you know, doing what you're good at, you know, because you believe in the work, you know. But as a nonprofit, so many times you will have those days where you don't feel like you can do this, you know. And so when we reach out to private corporations for support, you know, I mean, we hope to just be listened to at the end of the day. I mean, to talk to somebody about, you know, what our needs are. It looks like, you know, Comcast coming in to help us with our Parent Alliance network, you know, provide us with some tools to talk about, you know, getting internet into your home, you know, because we do something very specific. You know, our kids are creating games, you know, so it does take some specific hardware, it takes some specific just resources, you know, so we got to have those conversations with parents, and so it's helpful when we can get those problems solved with partners like Comcast. When we're trying to get parents to be a part of the conversations about tech, you know, it's helpful when we can get them passes to these types of conferences that are going on right here in the Bay Area. You know, we need to get more families involved and get them to understand why they need to invest in these type of opportunities for their families, for their kids, because kids do see their parents do these type of things, and that resonates way more than anything we can do within our program. You know, so help us get the parents involved. So we love those type of partnerships where we can come up with some real challenges around trauma and inclusion that we're trying to resolve, when we can get help on those levels. But it's very, very hard when, you know, you can't get through those doors, you know, as an organization. You're trying to speak up for the people that you represent, and you can't do it yourself. So it's very, very hard, you know. So and that just speaks to just like a bigger, you know, infrastructure, you know. And I think I've heard Kalimah say that again, you know, when you just aren't listening, you know, how are we keeping our wheels in motion? You feel like we're keeping our wheels just spinning and going nowhere, you know. So we just need people to listen as well. You know, we need the financial support so we can keep doing the great work that we're doing. It's not just us. So when you fund the David E. Glover Center, you know, you're funding us and our partners as well, you know, to keep our collaboration going on. Collaboration isn't easy. You may not have the coding, but we can be your partner in coding. But we got to break through our own issues as well so that we can make that connection. So we're on the ground level right now, and the way that we're solving these problems is sometimes I'm surprised that we're engineers, developers, you know, teachers, you know, educators, and we can't solve this issue of inclusion as far as like what does it look like, and not just within the classroom but within policies as well. So it's something, like I said, you have those days where you just are not inspired some days, but, you know, seeing those kids' eyes and just being re-inspired every day by somebody who says, I did it, you know, and I want more, you know. I think that's what keeps us going. But we are businesses, you know, at the same time we got to do all those things. I mean, so the support that we can use from private, it could be very small as financial, but it can be just as large as just being a part of the conversation that we're starting.
Well, you know, Ken, you're a great example of, honestly, you should just teach a whole course on what it is to be a steward of the community. You show up, you're there, and because you're there, then you can challenge the prevalent myth in Silicon Valley. As someone who, you know, is a hacker, as someone who has gone through the tech startup phase and the funding phase, you know, I know what happens in a lot of these labs, and that is that there's this prevalent myth that in order for you to be a hacker, in order for you to be in tech, that you've got to have some slight Asperger's, or that you've got to be, you know, you've got to be an asshole, you know, like you got to, you know, and then venture capital then just adds numbers to that called pattern matching. But it's this prevalent myth that's there that very similar to when I was growing up, when we were growing up, where in order to be a scientist, you had to look like Albert Einstein. Remember that? And then that changed, right? That changed when we saw diverse faces and people and experiences who became scientists. And so this is the same thing. And you don't know that. You can't challenge a myth unless you're on the ground talking to us, unless you're there showing up at our community centers, at our community gatherings, at our hackathons, at our boot camps. And so I believe that it has to do with who do you pick, and who you pick is that person in love with this work of creating mobility.
Can I add something?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Because what you said actually is just remind me of something really important. And I mean, right now we're living a very strange time in our lives where suddenly it's like all these race things that we thought that we were, it was, I think of the past, like boom, it's like, what? We haven't really advanced. And in Oakland, I mean, let's face it, we do have a huge race problem that we have to resolve. I mean, I have many kids who have had terrible experience with their peers who are African American, and then it becomes, like everybody's afraid of these African American kids.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing that we have the huge advantage is that in our centers, we do have the opportunities to open these different strategies. Like I just started actually a partnership with a high school that approached me from Alameda. And the number of kids that come to my program actually increased on Fridays, only because these other kids are coming. And it's sad to see that for these kids, this is the first time when they can actually interact with a white kid, because most of the kids are actually white. So it's sad, but it's hopeful that at the end, our kids are kids and their hearts are amazing. Yeah. And once they have that opportunity to play together and put both in an equal stage, because what we did here is these kids from Alameda are trying to learn Spanish. And that's the best skill that my kids have. So my kids are trying to learn English. And the rule when they come is those trying to learn Spanish only speak Spanish, and those trying to learn English only speak English. And at the beginning, it was like, they were like, but now they are like, just like into it. And this is just my first experiment, and I am working towards my next experiment is actually bring a group of kids who are African American. Maybe their kids can teach my kids coding. Yeah. And there are many opportunities. We just need the funding to keep the building open with all this stuff, right? But there are opportunities that we can absolutely use, and we must use in a time when there is so much hate and miscommunication going on in our community.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. So, we live in this age of where we say diversity and inclusion, but yet we don't even know our neighbors, yeah. Right? And I think that's why it's so important that, there's a cross-cultural functionality that starts to be created in cities like Oakland. Because I think, unfortunately, when you hear the stories of a young Latino, having a fear of another person because they had a bad experience, that's education. That it's not just because they were maybe they were just exposed to just one person that they had that experience with. So we have to teach them better and also give them an experience that they interact more. And so I would applaud you and Okur or Kano or Boys and Girls Club in Oakland to actually do that kind of work. I'm going to bring it out to the crowd and see if there's anyone that actually has any questions for the panelists today.
You have a lady there.
Oh, she got it. In flip-flops.
Hi everyone, first thank you for sharing your story. So we're from South Africa, and
okay.
And I run a non-profit, so I brought the girls with me. It's a coding for girls.
Can you speak louder, please?
Sorry. Okay, so we are from South Africa, and I run a non-profit which teaches girls coding. Yes. And thank you. So a lot of what you guys said resonate even with what we do in South Africa. And what I've seen is the conversation has been changing to for nonprofits to become social entrepreneurs, basically forming hybrid models where on the one part you generate income, on the other part you use that income to fund the nonprofit. And I was just curious if it's something that you guys are considering or even talking about, because it is an issue even for us to like fight for grants, companies to sponsor you. The money runs out, and if you keep coming back, they're like, that's not sustainable, we can't keep giving you money. So I wanted to find out how you guys deal with that, and if there's a conversation around the hybrid model, where you sort of branch out into becoming a company and provide services to people who can pay, and then use that money to substitute the nonprofit.
I definitely can answer that. So San Francisco Foundation still here? Yeah, all right. So San Francisco Foundation has a headache every time we submit a report because we keep changing our business model because we're so focused on being a hybrid. I have a for-profit background, private background, so I look at those solutions. And that's one of the things that we need to change the language, shift the language, which is that we're not nonprofits, we're impact organizations, right? And so we look at what are the best solutions to solving the world's biggest problems. And so being someone who's very close to South Africa, to J-Town and Cape Town, and was there just 2 years ago, and talking to some of the folks who are building boot camps, one of the interesting things is that it very much like what happened with the mobile market in the continent of Africa, that that there had to be a jump. There had to be to go from being for the digital divide to mobile, and so very similar. It's as an impact organization, you have to jump to hybrid because the space of nonprofit, and even though you have countries like the United States where we do have a nonprofit culture and system that's in place, the fact remains is that in places like in South Africa, they would rather support non-black South Africans. They trust non-black South Africans to solve the problems, right? And so it's a lot harder for black South Africans or colored South Africans to solve problems and issues because those dollars aren't there. And so that's why I encourage that there be a hybrid business model, that I encourage. Eckerd Green released a report, and in the report it shared that I believe that out of 26, 27, and Eckerd Green, if you're hearing this, please tweet the exact numbers, about 26, about 50 organizations that were considered hybrid or hybrid business models, that a good 80% of them were white and Asian, and very few of them were black. And so and what happens is that then the two, in a lot of black and brown cultures, that it's either your commercial or your nonprofit. And you're pushed to one or the other. Even a lot of our conferences are the same. Either you have a conference around diversity and inclusion, commercial-wise, or it's nonprofit. And so, and I think that that there's so much in the middle between SoCap and TechCrunch that if you want to solve problems, you have to look at ways to be able to sustain yourself and have really great minds at the table. And that's, I love what you said in terms of like them listening and being on board to help impact organizations develop things like marketing, and so one of the best things that can happen is that those with money, those with smart money, approach impact organizations and say, hey, you know what, we're going to treat you like a product. And so we want you to iterate into the next level. And here are some things that we can do in order to do that, to help refine your business model. Rather than, we're going to give you money, you defend, you give us the numbers, and then we'll think about whether or not we're going to give you money next year, which is totally unsustainable.
Right. I would like to add one more thing also. One of the things that I think we find often is that we also have to educate our clients.
Yes. Yeah.
Because just as I was saying, like, we're not equal partners with foundations, sometimes we're not equal partners with our clients. And I think that is a mistake. Because when we're treating our clients as someone we're helping but not recognizing that they can help us too, the model doesn't work either. And just last week, actually, last Sunday, I spent the whole day at the organization, and our youth, I was actually teaching them how to open a Gmail account, and and this was actually the day after the earthquake in Mexico City. And some of our kids are Mexican, some are Guatemalan, some are from Honduras. And one of them sort of interrupted me and said, Alicia, didn't you hear that there was an earthquake in Mexico? And I said, of course I did. And I was in Mexico City in 1985 when there was a big earthquake. So this is something that is affecting me, and I'm trying to be professional here. But what do you want to do about it? And he said, well, we want to do something about it. Let's talk about it. And I said, well, you run the show. And I let them organize the whole thing. They put together a fundraiser, and they sold pozole and ice cream and anything that they found in the community. And they fundraised $401. And they're going to send it to a youth group that has been also organized, just like our group here. They have been shipping things to rural areas that were also affected between Mexico City and where the epicenter was. And this is so amazing. I mean, I really have hope in the new generation, because we can learn so much from them. And as nonprofit leaders, it's always a learning experience when it also reminds you working with the community. And that doesn't only mean being with the community, serving the community. So it also means giving the community the opportunity to help us and to be part of the community helping others.
I think that'll be your last word, but let's hear from these last two gentlemen. Give me some hope. Give the audience some hope. We've had a lot of conversation today about what has been some of the challenges, even stemming outside of the country. What is some hope that you can give to us today in one sentence in regards to our young people and nonprofits and partnerships?
I had a conversation with Barbara Lee 2 days ago, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, and so my hope is that STEAM education is treated as a national security issue, and that we look at that we need more of our young people, regardless of gender and race and barriers, to help prepare our own cyber defense from a lot of attacks that you'll see increasing in the country. And so we need more of our young people to protect this institution that we call the American democracy.
Paul?
I like that. I do. National security is real. But for me, I would say there's not an app for this, I mean, like, technology is a tool, we love the tool, it makes our lives better. But when we talk about tech inclusion, I mean, it really does require people showing up, inviting everybody into the door. And again, there's not going to be an app for that. So I think just, if we all can just continue doing what we do and encouraging others to just, spread that love, I'll be pretty optimistic about where we're going. But I would like to step away from the tech, and just really be about that action.
Excellent. And I just want to thank each one of you. You've been a great partner in our Internet Essential program that we started about 5 years ago, and we signed up millions to make sure that they have internet at home that at the cost of $10 a month. And some actually choose to get a laptop, but each one of you have been major partners in Oakland. So thank you for that, and let's give them a round of applause.